Greetings, programs. Welcome back to ArcNeo Reviews. So, probably a fairly short video today, but I wanted to do a little bit of a comparison between the Bittboy and the RK2020. Just, kind of help anyone who's, on the fence deciding which system to get. Worth noting for sake of this video is I do actually have the Bittboy switched back to the firmware that it had outside, just out of the box, since that seemed the more reasonable and fair comparison point here. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over these two things, talk about differences, similarities, and maybe help someone, decide which version they want to get. Go ahead and turn down some brightness here. Let's see here. No, not suspend. Leave. There we go. That's the leave button. Okay. So yeah, both of these systems, they've got their pros and their cons. Shared con, in my opinion, is the fact that neither of them have a native, volume wheel or something. So for both systems, you are going to be, holding a button and, mashing up and down, or in the case of the Bittboy, it's actually a little worse because you're going to be holding select and then using the face buttons. And the face buttons don't always make the most sense on what they're doing. Which, a little bit of a bummer there. Both systems, the controls feel wonderful, I do have to say. Little bit softer D-pad on the RK, while the Bittboy's D-pad is a little bit more, clicky. And what they run, they both run really well. Obviously, the RK has a lot more things it emulates, as well as it has a lot more buttons. But what the Bittboy does, it does very well. And to be fair, it has a few advantages. Obviously, if you are willing to hassle with updating the firmware, you do get rumble support, which is so cool. I can't overstate how cool that is. The fact that it has rumble. But, at the same time, they put PlayStation and Arcade on here. Neither of those work very well. I don't even know why, but Super Nintendo also is terrible on this thing. So, that's a bit of a bummer that it does come with basically 3 non-functioning emulators already put on it. But, obviously this thing runs, if you're willing to go through the hassle of updating its firmware, this thing runs Doom, this thing runs Quake. It runs a lot more than you would expect it to, which is really cool. And, yeah, this thing runs more systems, but it also costs twice as much if you're going to go buy one. So always keep that in mind. The Bittboy is I want to say it's $50 or less if you just go with a base one, that doesn't come with the extra sized SD card. And, to be fair, if you skip using PS1, Arcade, and Super Nintendo, the ones that don't really work, the normal 8 gig SD card they give you with this thing, it's going to run basically anything that you want to run. Whereas here, this comes with 32 gig by default. I don't think there's even an option to get a bigger one, actually. You're going to need that because, your Dreamcast, your PlayStation, your PSP, those are going to take a lot more, storage size. As well as, it's worth mentioning, The RK has a bit of a weird screen size. Now, that only comes up in certain game systems, but let's see, I think you can see it in the Super Nintendo, so I'll go load something up there. Also, yeah, here's your Raspberry Pi game ports. That wrong. See, I'll pull up. Go ahead and pull up Zelda here. I know you can see my 2 a.m. hair reflection here. I apologize. But yeah, you can kind of see a little bit already. Like, not all pixels are sized, correctly. The picture can look a little stretched and a little distorted in places on this system. That does obviously, vary system to system. And yes, you can change the the video scaling on this thing, but it's a universal setting, so you actually have to change it per system. Like, you have to rechange it every system you go to, which is kind of weird, but it is there. You will have to leave your games to do it. Whereas on the RK, I'll just start up something for the Game Boy here. Here, we'll be fair. We'll load up another Zelda game over here. Here you actually have access to your settings, in the while you're running the game. You can switch your color palettes, you can change your borders, you can do all kinds of stuff on this one that these aren't options you actually have on this one. This one runs the games, saves, does save states, does fast forwarding. This one, you get way better scaling for the video. As you can see right here, I'm actually able to switch the scaling modes. Right here, you can switch if you want, fast, where it leaves it a little bit crunchy on the edges, or smooth, where it will do its best to, soften the picture. You've options. Again, options. You gotta love options. It does result in a really, really clean experience for the games that work on here. Whereas again, here, you're gonna run into some crunchy sound. You're gonna run into some crunchy visuals. But at the same time, it's also just stupidly impressive what this thing actually does for just a little pocket handheld. So, I'm not actually going to say either system is better than the other, because they're each doing different things. If you want something that will play, this thing especially works great as an unofficial Game Boy Classic. Just put all your Game Boy stuff on it. It's going to run amazingly. Put on your WonderSwan games. It does WonderSwan Color and normal. All that stuff on here is amazing. Lots of options for your visuals. Rumble. If you're willing to hassle with, firmware updates, it can run more stuff, which is great. This one, out of the box, has got a million emulators it can use. Obviously, you're going to have to hassle with some BIOS and some things like that. And you're going to need some way to interact with Linux to do most, file transfers to it. You unfortunately can't just move the SD card over, because the SD card is formatted in Linux speak. And obviously, again, this thing does cost, $20 twice as much as this. So, take that all up for what you will. And again, remember, there's an expected level of computer literacy, I guess is the best way to explain, when you get into emulators. There's a lot of things. They will just assume you already know this. So, if you aren't familiar with emulators at all, and you're sitting there going, what's a BIOS, when I say things like that, I'm actually going to say don't bother with these. Just start Googling and learn about emulation first. You want to know how to emulate on a computer, which is the easiest way to emulate, before you start trying to mess with emulator boxes like this. So, keep that in mind. I'm not trying to, be a horrible evil gatekeeper or something. I'm just trying to warn people, you have to know a little bit about what you're doing, or have a friend who knows about this kind of stuff, and, pay them $20 to do it, because it's going to take some time to get these things set up. You have weird little hoops you have to jump through to put your games on either system. Either pay a friend $20 who knows how to do this kind of stuff, or, again, go start doing some research on how these things work, because, again, there's an assumed level of, knowledge about these things when you start running emulation and emulation boxes in particular. So, be prepared for that. Either way, hope this was at least a little bit helpful on anyone who's, deciding, if they want to get the Bittboy or spend the extra for the RK. Also worth mentioning, the RK has substantially longer battery life than the Bittboy does. That's just because the Bittboy, frankly, has a very, very tiny battery. If I can get this battery pack off. This thing's, it's a little battery. There might be ways to get bigger batteries for it. I'm not sure. Meanwhile, this thing, most of the back panel on it is a battery, which is awesome. But, again, keep these things in mind. Neither of these are just grab and go. If you find the older Bittboys, I want to say the version 2, yeah, that only played 3 different systems, but it was also as grab and go as you get with these kind of things. Again, that's just kind of the price you pay with emulators, and especially things that are open source. But, just research, know what you're getting before you get yourself into it, so that way you aren't, frustrated and disappointed. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully my ramblings here at least gave someone some kind of useful info, and I will see you guys next time.